There is a nutrient that your body needs every single day to keep your nerves firing correctly, your brain thinking clearly, and your red blood cells carrying oxygen the way they should. And here is the part that surprises most people: you can be eating a perfectly reasonable diet, feeling mostly fine, and still be running low on it, without knowing it for years. After the age of 50, something changes in your digestive system that quietly undermines your ability to absorb this nutrient no matter how much of it you consume. And if you take one of the most commonly prescribed medications in the world, your risk goes even higher. We are talking about vitamin B12, and today we are going to walk through exactly why it matters so much in the second half of life, what the science actually says, and how you can start paying more attention to it in a way that is practical and grounded in evidence. Let us start with what B12 actually does, because this is one of those nutrients that shows up in almost every important process in your body, and yet most of us learned almost nothing about it. At its core, vitamin B12 is essential for two things that matter enormously as we age. The first is the health of your nervous system. B12 plays a direct role in maintaining the myelin sheath, that is the protective coating that wraps around your nerve fibers the way insulation wraps around an electrical wire. When that coating stays intact, nerve signals travel fast and accurately. When it begins to degrade, the signals get slower, noisier, less reliable. Researchers have associated long-term B12 insufficiency with sensations like tingling or numbness in the hands and feet, balance difficulties, and cognitive changes that can be subtle at first but become more pronounced over time. The second major role is in the production of red blood cells. B12 works alongside folate to help your body produce healthy, properly sized red blood cells. Without adequate B12, red blood cells can become abnormally large and malformed, meaning they carry oxygen less efficiently. That kind of inefficiency does not show up as a dramatic event. It shows up as fatigue, as brain fog, as that feeling that you used to bounce back faster than you do now. And after 50, those are exactly the kinds of changes that are easy to chalk up to aging when the real driver might be something addressable. Now here is the central question: why does B12 become a particular problem after 50 specifically? The answer lies in something called stomach acid and a very specific protein called intrinsic factor. When you are younger and your digestive system is working optimally, here's what happens when you eat a piece of salmon or a boiled egg. The acid in your stomach, along with a digestive enzyme called pepsin, breaks the B12 free from the protein it is bound to in food. Then a protein called intrinsic factor, produced by specialized cells in the lining of your stomach, grabs onto that freed B12 and escorts it safely down to the lower part of your small intestine, where it is absorbed into your bloodstream. It is a beautifully coordinated system. But as we age, gastric acid secretion tends to decrease in many people. This is a well-documented physiological change, sometimes called atrophic gastritis in its more pronounced form, and it affects a meaningful proportion of adults over 50. When there is less stomach acid, that first step, liberating B12 from the food it is bound to, becomes less efficient. The B12 may pass through your digestive system largely intact but unabsorbed. You could be eating salmon 3 times a week and still not extracting the B12 your body needs. That is a fundamentally different problem from just not eating enough of the right foods, and it is why B12 deserves more attention than it typically gets. Then there is the medication piece, and this one genuinely catches people off guard. 2 of the most widely prescribed drug categories in adults over 50 can further reduce B12 absorption. The first is proton pump inhibitors, medications often prescribed for acid reflux or GERD that work by reducing stomach acid production. The mechanism here connects directly back to what we just discussed: less acid means less efficient B12 liberation from food. The second category is metformin, one of the most commonly used medications for managing type 2 diabetes. Research has consistently linked long-term metformin use with lower B12 levels, and the mechanism appears to involve the drug interfering with the absorption process in the small intestine. Neither of these medications is bad. They are often genuinely important for the conditions they treat. But the interaction with B12 is real, and it is something that nutrition researchers and clinicians have flagged as worth monitoring. If you take either of these regularly, this is genuinely a conversation worth having with your doctor, and we will come back to that. So what can you actually do about this? Let us talk food first, because that is always where we should start. The richest sources of B12 are animal products. Clams and other shellfish are remarkably high in it. A small portion of cooked clams contains more B12 than almost any other food. But you do not need to eat clams every week. Other excellent sources include salmon, trout, tuna, beef, chicken, eggs, and dairy products like yogurt and milk. For people who eat animal products regularly, a varied diet that includes these foods several times a week provides a solid foundation. For those following a vegetarian or vegan diet, this is where things get more important. Plant foods do not naturally contain meaningful amounts of B12. Fortified foods, certain plant-based milks, breakfast cereals, and nutritional yeast that has been fortified, can fill part of that gap. Nutrition researchers consistently highlight that people over 50 who eat plant-forward diets should pay particularly close attention to their B12 status. Here is an interesting nuance that is worth understanding. The B12 found in supplements and fortified foods is in a free, crystalline form. It does not need stomach acid to liberate it from food protein. That means even if your stomach acid production has declined, your body may absorb this form more readily than the B12 in whole food sources. This is one of the reasons that some nutrition guidelines suggest that adults over 50 consider consuming a significant portion of their B12 from fortified foods or supplements, not as a replacement for a good diet, but as a complement to it. The science here is fairly consistent, and it is one of the more concrete, actionable recommendations in the aging and nutrition literature. Now for the honest part, because this channel is always going to give you the full picture. B12 is not a cure for fatigue. It is not going to reverse cognitive decline if the decline is driven by something else entirely. If your energy is low, there are dozens of potential explanations: sleep quality, thyroid function, iron levels, cardiovascular health, and much more. B12 insufficiency is one piece of a larger picture, not a magic answer. And individual variation matters enormously here. Some people over 50 maintain excellent B12 absorption well into their 70s. Others develop significant deficiency without obvious symptoms for years. The only way to know where you stand is a simple blood test. And that brings us to the most important practical point in this entire video. This is general education, not medical advice, and your own B12 status is something to discuss with your doctor, particularly if you are over 60, take metformin or a proton pump inhibitor, follow a plant-based diet, or have noticed any unexplained fatigue, tingling, or memory changes. Here's what the research consistently tells us. B12 is inexpensive to measure, relatively easy to address when levels are low, and plays a disproportionately important role in the kinds of biological systems, nerve health, energy metabolism, cognitive function, that we care about most as we age. It is the kind of nutrient that does not announce its absence loudly until things are well underway. Paying attention to it is not about fear. It is about being informed, asking good questions, and making sure the fundamentals are covered. A few servings of fish each week, some eggs or dairy if that works for your diet, a conversation with your doctor at your next visit, that is a low-effort, high-value starting